going on, guys? Nick here from Quack Rack. So today we are here to show you the installation of our rear rack on a Polaris Ranger. Let's start with, after you unbox the components that you'll find within your package. You'll have a driver side and a passenger side leg. They will be labeled with a D and a P. You'll have the rear rack tray, the rear rack basket itself, and then you'll have the mounting, locking systems, and all the necessary hardware. We will put this within this slide. So we're gonna dive right in. This is a super easy, user-friendly installation. Let's get into it and we'll walk you guys through it. So first step is once you verify that you do in fact have all the necessary components, you can set the legs to the side for right now. If your rack has integrated LED lighting systems like our Elite Series Pro, wires will come zip tied up, so you just clip those zip ties and it'll be time to grab the basket. We recommend putting something underneath it, cardboard, foam, whatever it may be, just so you don't damage any of the powder coating. And you will flip it. First step, you will flip it on its face, exposing the machine blocks in all four corners that your legs are gonna go into. Now it's time to grab the legs. And I wanna point this out with Ryan holding this leg. So if you do have an integrated LED lighting system, your passenger side leg is gonna have a notch. This notch is super important because when these round tube legs go into the machine blocks, you wanna make sure the wire feeds through the notch to avoid pinching your wire. So next step right here, we found the passenger side leg and the tube with the notch in it. You're just gonna go ahead and feed the wire down. Again, we're working with our brand new Elite Series Pro rear rack. So it's got two sets of wires, two grounds, two positives. So you'll feed one set through, just fish it through the leg itself. We'll do the exact same thing for the second set of wires. So once you have your wires fed through, you'll go ahead and insert the leg. It's super easy. Oversized machine blocks that are milled out, as you can see what Ryan just did. Legs press right in. We want to make sure that they do ground out, and you'll be able to easily tell. Again, both wires are fished through the top of the leg on the passenger side. It's passenger rear, through the notch, and then there's a hole that's pre-drilled from factory, ships from us to you in the bottom of the leg, and that's where your wire is going to come out. At this point in time, just take your wire, kind of push it to the side. Let's go into what Ryan's doing right now. So one of the components within the hardware pack is going to be 8 set screws. 2 set screws to fasten and lock the legs in per machine block. So 2 per block, 8 total in the whole system, so that's what he's doing right now. You don't have to tighten these all the way, just tight enough that when you flip the rack back over and go to put it on the bed, the legs stay attached to the basket itself. So that's what we're doing right now. Passenger side's done. Repeat the same process, obviously no wiring involved on the driver's side. So you'll press those down in there. They go in super easy. He just made sure that they're grounded out. Now it's time to fasten them down with the set screws. So now we've got both driver and passenger side support legs in place, fastened down, hand tight. Let's move on. Next step is Avery, we're gonna have you come in here for this step right here. We'll take the rack and flip it back right side up, resting on its legs. Again, throughout this process, we send enough wire to run it all the way to the front, power source and a switch. Just make sure your wire stays out of the way. So now that we've got the basket turned right side up, legs installed, it's time to actually lift the entire rack system up. For now, just rest it on the bed rails, as you can see. And this is where it's important, and while we emphasize, don't tighten these all the way, because you do want a little bit of play. As you can see, I mean, every bed's gonna be different, you know, from factory of Polaris, based on how you're using it. So once you've got the rack system rested up, we recommend on the passenger side, on this piece of angle right here, just rest it on top of the bed. That way you don't set the rack system on top of the wires. You can see what Ryan's doing right now. He's feeding the wire through the last tapered hole on the bed rail of this Ranger. So that wire will just drop through the bed and pop out the bottom. That way there's zero interference. Once this rack system is completely installed and wired, you can still utilize the bed dump function on this particular machine. That is a question we get asked often. If I get an Elite Series, are we gonna be able to still, you know, dump the bed? Absolutely, it has zero interference. So now that we've fished both of our wires through, pulled through all the slack so there's no interference, we can now press in and press down. The rack at this point in time is just resting on the bed rails, completely secure. Now it's time to come in and use the QR lock system Again, we'll send 4 of these, 2 per side. And Ryan, if you guys come in here for a second, Ryan is going to show you how to install this and actually secure the rack to the bed itself. So we want to demonstrate, before we continue on with this installation on the rear rack on this Polaris Ranger, we want to demonstrate how to properly install our QR lock system right here. And again, this is a crucial component of this installation because this system that I'm holding in my hand right now is what locks the entire rack system to the bed rail of the machine itself. Super simple. So how you're going to receive this lock system is just like this. So you've got 3 rubber bushings, a bolt that goes, an elevator bolt that goes through, a twist knob with a bolt on it, and an oversized washer. You're going to take the oversized washer and the twist knob off. Take the bushings right here with the extra bolt coming through, come up underneath the leg, right here. And honestly, we recommend doing this even before putting the entire rack system on. So you can pre-install these on the legs even before you put the legs into the rack like we showed you in a couple previous steps. You can do it either way, but it might be more user-friendly to, before you even install the legs onto the rack itself, go ahead and pop these in just so you don't fight them when you're trying to get them into the bed rail holes themselves. So you'll come in, take this, go underneath, drop your oversized washer in, and then just take your knob and thread her on. At this point in time, and I want to point this out, you do not want to crank this down. This basically works as an over-engineered boat plug, right? So the more torque you put on this, the tighter you get, these swell up. So you don't want it to be loose in here, but spin it until it stops and maybe give it 1 extra turn and you're ready to go. Repeat the process on this hole and then obviously the other side of the leg. And now we're going to go back to the machine and show you how they go in. Okay, so now we've got everything propped up here. We've got our passenger side QR lock systems, hand tight, thread it through the leg itself. Ryan's going to show you how they go. And now, before we do this, I want to point it out. This is a tight fit. Getting these rubber bushings and the QR lock system into these holes at times can be a bit tight. We do recommend using water, even soapy water, but please avoid all oil-based solutions. So as you can see right here what Ryan's doing, we're just wetting it down. Again, they're designed to be tight. We want them to be tight because, again, this is what locks the entire rack to the bed rail itself. So we did wetten it down a little bit with some water. And at this point in time, you can see he kind of did a little bit of a pull up. They slide right in. If they fight you a little bit, even with water on here, you might have to loosen this up. You can play with the tension, but again, when you install these at first, don't come and crank them down, then expect them to slide easy. This is a tight fit and it's designed to be just like that. So at this point in time, you can go ahead and crank them down like you see Ryan doing, tighten them down, and this is where you do want to get them as tight as you can possibly get them. Again, this is a piece that once your rack is installed, once your rack is in use, we do strongly recommend to every couple uses, every couple trailers, before you maybe put the machine on a trailer and go to duck camp for the weekend, please make sure these are tight. So we've got the driver's side done. We're gonna show you again, we're installing them with the rack already on here. You can do it either way. Before you even put the legs in, it can be the first step you do, or you can do it just like this. So the QR lock system comes up underneath from the bottom, bolt goes through the hole, oversized washer, twist knob, spin it on, 1 extra spin. So now that both sides are in, time to grab our squirt bottle. Again, no oil-based product. Water preferably, soap and water is okay. And they should slide in with a little bit of a pull up. There you go, and as you can see, I mean, he's putting good pressure. It's flexing the suspension of the machine. We want you to do that. If you've got to do a full pull-up on it, go ahead and do it. Make sure they are grounded in there, and you'll know. So now that we know that they're in there, we're going to tighten everything down. Tighten that side. We'll make sure this side's tight. He's got them good, nice and tight. So he's got them tightened down. This thing is sturdy as can be. As you can see, putting as much force on it as possible. Go ahead and try it out for yourself. Make sure it is locked. We do recommend coming underneath one of the gutters and trying your hardest to press up because you do not want any budge in this rack. Again, I can't emphasize enough. These knobs secure the rack system to the bike itself. At all times, these need to be as tight as possible. Quick spot checks when you're about to put on a trailer. It takes an extra 5 or 10 seconds, and you make sure your rack is safely installed at all times. All right, so now that we have the legs locked to the bed, next step is it's time to tighten all set screws. Again, up until this point, you do want them fastened enough that the set screw is touching the leg to make sure the legs don't fall off when you lift the rack up, but you do not want them fully tightened. At this point in time, we're gonna come in, tighten 2 per machine block, 8 total. Another piece of this rack system on across the board, any rear rack, another part that you want to always make sure is tight. Again, these make sure that the legs stay in the rack system. Obviously, you've got the weight, so the rack's most likely not going anywhere, but you do want to verify these are tight, and you want to verify that your QR bed locks are tight. So now that we've got the rear rack installed in the bed, the next step is going to be, we are going to start the wiring process. If you guys do not have LED lights in your rack, obviously you don't have to follow along, but for those guys that have the Elite Series or the Elite Series Pro, you'll want to pay attention to these next couple steps. So we're going to hand the wire to Ryan. And the first step in this that we do recommend doing is just taping the wire together. Obviously, there's 2 sets of wires here because this is an Elite Series Pro. So you've got 2 different LED lighting systems. So we're going to tape the wire first, and then we'll be back. So now that we have our wires, our 2 wires wrapped together, we're going to begin the process of routing the wire into the cab itself. So we're going to show you how to do that. So on these Rangers, you'll find a factory taillight harness. Wires coming out the passenger side, so you'll utilize the factory taillight harness that you'll find. It'll be in some jacketing or some wire loom. Just route the wire along the exact same path that you find right up underneath the bed. It goes up under the top ledge of the frame, and that's how you'll start to carry and route the wire towards the center of the bike, and then you'll bring your wire right up the middle, following the OEM wiring and rear passenger side taillight harness, and the wire will pop out right into the cab. Now this part can be a little tricky. That is one of the reasons we recommend wrapping the wire, just to protect the wire. You know, you're gonna have to feed through some pretty tight little spaces. There are gonna be some edges, seeing that we're feeding wire through the frame. So we do recommend, whether you use electrical tape or we're using OEM like wiring type tape, just to protect the wire. It kind of acts as like another form of jacketing on it. But again, you'll pull it through. You can see we've got a little bit of slack through here, but we have routed up over the back of the frame, right kind of in a similar location as to where our bumper ties in, and we pulled vast majority of our slack through. The next route that we're going to take is straight up the middle of the bike, and again, we're still following the OEM wiring, the OEM harness. So if you just find these wires that are hidden in the loom and follow the same path, that's going to pop you out right where you want to, right next to your battery. So once you've got your wire pulled through and you start your route to inside the cab, you've got everything just where you want it, we recommend having a pack of zip ties and some cutters handy. You'll want to zip tie to the OEM harness, or however you route your wire up. Just make sure everything stays high and tight so you don't have any wire slack hanging down, potential to get caught on something, or you know, rest on top of the exhaust with the machine in use. We'll pop through the cab and show you guys how to hook it up to the battery, route it to the front terminal post to switch, and we'll be about wrapped up on this installation. So once you've got your wire pulled through and you're inside the cab right here, for the 2 downward facing bed lights, so those will come on the Elite Series Pro, and then obviously just the only 2 lights that you'll find on the Elite Series version. We've already taken care of vast majority of the wiring for you. So we've wired into the switch. The switch is already integrated into the back of the rear rack itself. So the only thing you're gonna need to do here is find a power source. Being the battery, it's the shortest run from the back. In this Polaris Ranger, the battery's right underneath the back seat. So you'll take your wire, peel it back, connect 2 ring terminals. If they're heat shrink ring terminals, make sure to crimp them on, heat shrink them down, connect to your positive and your ground terminals, retighten everything up, and you are good to go. Obviously, always spot check your lights, make sure all the connections are just fine. Again, you'll find that switch in the center of the back of this rear rack, and once everything's hooked up to power, you're good to go on the Elite Series. For you Elite Series Pro owners, there'll be a couple more steps in routing the second set of wire that you see right here to the front of the bike. How you're gonna do that is you'll have to pull the floor panels up, and you'll route your wire up through the floor, just again using all the OEM wiring that you'll find underneath there. There are 2 in these Rangers. There are 2 terminal posts, a ground and a hot terminal post underneath the hood, so you get power from there. Route it to a switch that'll be installed on the dash. You've got a couple opening switches. So on this one, you've got 4 open switches, or places for a switch to go. They're just pop outs. You'll put an OEM switch in there. You can use a rocker if you'd like to, or you can use an OEM dash switch, route the wire to the switch, and you are good to go. Again, once you're done with this, make sure everything on the rack is tight, all your connections are tight, spot check the lights, and your rack is ready for use. So we greatly appreciate it. Thanks for following along. And as always, on all of our products, if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to one of the guys here at Quack Rack. We'll get you taken care of. Appreciate it, guys.